Last, though, I do want to report on one immaterial amendment for an extension of time on the City of Carlsbad's loss and scenes revetment. We do have an objection, so I do have a few comments that are perhaps a little bit long-winded, but we have a lot of good information to share. So for CDP 616-450A2, the Carlsbad Boulevard revetment, we received a written objection from Surfrider Foundation, arguing that the requested 7-year extension should be treated as a material amendment. The original CDP authorized retention of an approximately 500-foot-long revetment installed to protect southbound Carlsbad Boulevard, while the city prepared a long-term hazards management plan. In 2023, the Commission approved an amendment to extend the authorization for an additional year through 2024. And the subject amendment would extend the authorized lifespan of the revetment by an additional 7 years to 2031. Surfrider argues that extending the authorization materially changes the original permit because extending the timeline delays triggering the mitigation and alternatives analysis to the revetment required by the original permit for any continued retention of the revetment beyond its initial authorization period. And of course, we do appreciate these concerns. However, we continue to recommend the amendment remain immaterial. Since the original approval, Commission staff has worked closely with the City of Carlsbad on developing the long-term hazards management plan contemplated in the original permit. During this period, the city has completed several technical studies, including a cliff erosion assessment, habitat restoration analysis for the Las Encinas Creek, and an interim design alternatives analysis that developed 3 preliminary realignment concepts addressing resilience to coastal flooding, cliff erosion, and other sea level rise impacts. That initial planning effort was funded by the Coastal Conservancy in 2020, and although the city's made measurable progress toward meeting the requirements of the permit, it has not yet secured funding necessary to advance the project to final design, environmental review, and preparation of the CDP application, which is required under the original permit. So over the last 2 years, the city has pursued multiple state and federal grant opportunities for this next phase, but it has not yet been awarded any additional funds. The requested time extension will allow the city to obtain the funding necessary to go from feasibility level analysis to full project development. The next phase will include refining the preferred roadway alignment and environmental restoration alternative, conducting a constructability analysis, and completing environmental documentation and permitting. These deliverables will form the foundation of the future CDP application required by the underlying permit, including the required alternatives and mitigation analysis. So the city indicated that once funding secured, it anticipates about 3 years of work before submitting the CDP application. And the 7-year extension therefore provides sufficient time for both secure funding and to complete the required technical work before the revetment authorization expires in 2031. So staff agrees that progress on the long-term solution has taken longer than originally anticipated. When the Commission approved the 5-year temporary authorization, however, the proposed amendment does not authorize new development. It does not expand or alter the existing protection. It doesn't modify or relax any condition on the underlying permit. So all requirements of the permit, including the obligations to prepare and submit a long-term CDP, provide an alternatives analysis and provide mitigation for any proposed continued retention, remain fully in effect. So again, staff continues to recommend that amendment qualifies as an immaterial amendment. If 3 or more commissioners object to the designation, we would bring the matter back as a regular calendar matter. So with that, I'll conclude my comments. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any ex partes? Any public comments?
Yes. We have Kathleen Steidenberger. She should be here in person. And then after that, we'll go to Zoom. We have about 4 speakers on Zoom: Brandon Miles, Mitch Silverstein, George Broadway, and Tom Frank. We'll be moving you guys to panelists shortly.
Good afternoon, Coastal Commissioners and Coastal staff. My name is Kathleen Steindelberger. I'm a resident of Carlsbad, so I also drove quite a bit to come up here. And I'm also the former chair of the City of Carlsbad Beach Preservation Commission. I'm here because I love our beaches in Carlsbad. My family grew up surfing and swimming there, and I am hoping with good decision-making, our beaches remain for the next generation. Please decline to approve CDP Amendment number 616-045082 as immaterial amendment. Extending the authorization period for this 2015-2016 emergency permit rock revetment placed north of Encinitas Creek by 7 years would have adverse impacts on coastal resources, public access, and recreation. Despite strong enforceable conditions imposed by the coastal staff since 2024, this project has had zero progress. Further storm-induced erosion and damage along this highway is foreseen, not unforeseen. This stretch of road already overtops during king tides and large swells at high tide. Forecasts of another El Nino this winter raise the realistic prospect of further bluff failure, road closures, and potential additional emergency permit requests for more rock revetment along this stretch of Carlsbad Boulevard. How much time do I have left? Okay. The June 2026 Carlsbad budget passed with an excess of $144 million, yet $0 were allocated for this project. This permit extension allows the project to remain stagnant with a continued promise of studying feasibility and design alternatives without definitive plans. Adverse impacts of delaying this permit are not hypothetical. If we continue this action for another 7 years before finding solutions, we will lose the beach at this location in Carlsbad. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon Miles and Mitch Silverstein. So Brandon Miles first.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brandon Miles, City of Carlsbad. Over the last several years, the city has advanced planning and adaptation work. We've completed sea level rise vulnerability assessment in 2017, identifying South Carlsbad Boulevard as high risk. Since 2020, the city has accepted State Coastal Conservancy grant funding, retained a consultant, developed public engagement plan, advanced a community vision, and completed a 30% roadway design. In 2023, the City Council approved a 2-lane road concept to move forward under the Conservancy grant. The estimated construction cost was approximately $280 million. The city does not currently have that level of budgeted funding and must pursue additional grant opportunities to finance the project. To date, the city has submitted 7 grant applications, including a recent $2 million Ocean Protection Council request and an invitation to submit a full application to the State Coastal Conservancy grant, which we plan to submit soon. The city has also implemented active transportation and parking improvements and traffic calming along Carlsbad Boulevard. We're requesting an extension until March 2031, a 5-year extension to continue design, permitting, monitoring, and grant pursuant for durable realignment solution. If the extension is denied and the existing revetment is removed before relocation occurs, this roadway segment faces likely severe erosion and closure. The city has surveyed and plans to continue surveying the revetment every 5 years since 2015. Monitoring shows only minor movement and continues to protect access today. We appreciate the partnership with local districts, value public input, including Surfrider's participation, and support the district's recommendations on this item. With me is Tom Frank, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mitch Silverstein. He has a PowerPoint, which we have ready. And then you have George Broadway, who's also available for questions, and Tom Frank, like Brandon Miles said, available for questions as well. Mitch Silverstein. Mitch, I see you on.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
There you go.
Thank you. Mitch Silverstein with Surfrider. I live in Carlsbad and know this stretch well. This revetment protects a road with no viable future, a road that must and can be realigned out of harm's way. Next slide. I want to credit Carlsbad City staff for their initial work here. That work happened in part because of the conditions of this permit. They made incredible progress from 2020 to 2024, as city staff just detailed, and this photo shows some of those works in progress. I'll also say that that design and permitting of this realignment project is a priority project in their current strategic plan. Next slide. Here's the picture. The southbound road is threatened and the beach is disappearing, accelerated by the armoring permit in front of you today. The fix is to move southbound traffic onto the existing northbound road, just follow the arrow, demolish the old road, and free up all that space for a natural beach resilient to 6.5 feet of sea level rise. In 2024, progress stopped. The city states it cannot advance design or permitting without new grant funding, but its 2026 budget says otherwise. Carlsbad sits on a massive reserve and has spent tens of millions on nearby Carlsbad Boulevard sidewalk widening that is welcome but not critical. For this project, nothing beyond a $2 million grant it hopes to win. This is a matter of priorities, not funding. Next slide. This is from a month ago. High tides and swell produce this result every time. Next slide. This is two angles of the same area. This is flanking erosion at the north of the revetment in front of you today. More emergency armoring requests are coming this El Nino winter. Look at how close that is to the road. Next slide. We created a word cloud from the city's public survey, which asked the question, what do you want to see here in the future? Beach is the word. I do not see armoring or road. Next slide. This amendment means 13 years in place with no mitigation for sand supply impacts and no long-term hazards management CDP. Both are required by this permit. Almost finished. That required CDP doesn't require immediate implementation. It allows an event-driven schedule that can account for funding constraints. What is required is commitment. The city has the studies, the alternatives, and the money. So Surfrider asks that you approve a 2-year extension only, or reject the immaterial amendment and require material review because the longer extension will cause adverse impacts to access and resources. Thank you.
Thank you. No more speakers, only the ones available for questions.
Great, thank you very much. So, Mr. Schwing, I know you responded to that. I'll see if you want to make any comments before I turn back to the commission. Okay, fine, great, thank you so much. So returning to the commission, questions, comments, or looking to see if any commissioners object?
Yeah, I just
Commissioner
want
O'Malley.
to, just for the record, I'm convinced by what Mitch and the Surfrider folks, and I actually just only read this morning, and I was in my mind thinking, oh, 2 years sounds reasonable, and then to hear him say it, I just think for immaterial in 7 years, given where we are, it's something that I'd want to hear more about one way or the other, so I'm just going to, for the record, put my objection on.
Thank you. Commissioner Lowenberg, followed by Commissioner Jackson.
I agree. I just think 7 years is too long. And obviously this is eroding, and this winter is going to be, by all accounts, very, very bad in 27. So I think if there's a way to maybe shorten this up a little bit or have it up for review at some point, we can keep pushing, would be maybe a different way to go.
Through the chair, if I could respond. Yeah, I mean, I'll leave it to Carl to get a little more specific, but I think that, the issue here is that we have a project that we're all moving towards. There isn't a retreat plan here that everyone is moving towards, and that's unusual, but that's where they're headed. The challenge is getting the right set of funding to move the project forward. And you all know how long it can take a project to move forward. So we worked with the city to try to come up with a reasonable amount of time so that we didn't have to bring this back. Now, I appreciate the desire to push and keep things moving because it is clearly a dangerous area. That is very true. I don't think we felt comfortable telling the city how to spend their money in the sense that, the budgetary issue, that's not our issue, right? That's something the city needs to figure out how it's gonna fund this project. And so we felt it was reasonable, given they have no funding now, or no identified funding, I should say, right now, that 7 years to us felt reasonable, given it's a significant project, moving this big road inland, it's gonna take a while. So that's why I just wanted you to understand why we agreed that 7 years felt like a reasonable time frame. That said, if it is the will of the commission to hear this or to dig into that number a little more, that's of course your option. But from our perspective, we felt 7 years, and with the city, in conjunction with the city. But let me turn it over to Carl.
But can I just ask a question? Is there the political will to do this? I mean, sometimes, people have the best of intents and they ask more time, oh, we don't have the funding, we don't have this. But when there is the political will to get something done, I don't know, it's all of a sudden money materializes, has been my experience with local governments over the years. So I would just think that we need to figure out a way to keep the pedal down here. And if they do have a surplus, we can't tell them how to spend it, but we can put pressure on them to find the do-re-mi somewhere.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate the sides to this. Picture says 1,000 words, and that photo that was showed by Surfriders, speaks volumes. And that just shows urgency. 7 years does not, in my mind, as a local elected, denote anything that's urgent. That kicked the can down the road in my world. And I don't think we have that time because 7 years means, okay, we don't have to, and hope is not an option here. Hope is not a strategy. So there needs to be a strategy and a prioritization in my mind, consistent with what my colleagues were saying in terms of, maybe not pressuring, but certainly nudging to make something happen sooner versus later. And I don't think 7 years is sufficient enough nudge for that.
And if I may, through the chair, just to be clear, we're at this point we're talking about 5 years going forward. So the 7 covered 2 past years. So what we have remaining is 5 years. 2031 is the deadline with the changes staff recommended.
Commissioner Lopez. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, so I just want to come at this from the perspective also of a local government official. We're here obviously as commissioners, but we're assigned via some of those roles so that we can bring that perspective to the table. I just want to share, I've got a community that's gone 16 years without clean drinking water, and the state is responsible for that. So I appreciate the concern around 7, but being realistic about what it's going to take in a partnership to solve something like this, I just see realistically 5 may not be enough. I'm supportive of the 7, which becomes 5, just acknowledging that even getting a stretch of a different project, a stretch of Highway 101, where I have deaths every year closed off, I'm at year 8 and being told 7 more for actual construction. So we're looking at 15 years on that, and that's literal life and death in my community. So with those 2 projects as perspective on time frame, I can appreciate the 5, and I see 5 as a bit of a priority given the realistic time frames that I've experienced. And so you would use that to back what our staff is recommending here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a list of folks, but I'm going to take my prerogative briefly to just align myself with Commissioner Lopez's comments. And I was thinking throughout this conversation, as a local government representative, 5 years seems pretty darn fast, which I know is hard to wrap our heads around, but in the local government context, it absolutely is. That said, this is a great conversation to be having, and I am certain that everyone is listening and understanding what a priority it is, not just for the community, but also as a commission, that these types of really dangerous conditions are resolved. So with that, I'm just aligning myself with Commissioner Lopez, but think that it's an incredibly valuable conversation to continue. So Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. Could I get clarity of what has transpired in the last 2 years? Like, do we have CEQA completed? Is there 65% design? Like, what's the status?
I don't believe CEQA's been completed.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the status of design, but we do have city staff available for questions. So
Well,
perhaps they would be willing to answer that question.
okay. And what if the road is completely blown out in an El Nino situation and we have emergency repair? I come at this fully appreciating the timeline it takes for a local infrastructure project, but listening to the Eureka project earlier and what it takes for emergency repair, the city would be responsible for that, obviously, but an additional 5 years seems a little long, given the condition of the roadway right now.
We do have the city on Zoom, if you guys like to talk to them. Tom
Yeah,
Frank.
if they'd like
I'd love to
res-
see their, or hear their calendar, sorry, their
No, no,
schedule.
please. If they'd like to respond and perhaps let us know what actions have been completed or underway as to date. Thank you. They're available.
Tom Frank, you should be unmuted. Or Brandon Miles.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Tom Frank, and I'm the Transportation Director and City Engineer for the city. And first off, I wanted to thank the Executive Director and Deputy Director for framing up the project very well. And then I heard you did clarify that it's actually 5 years for moving the project forward and delivering the design and environmental studies from this date forward. Again, what has been done? Well, you've heard that we completed the study to evaluate the hazard along the coastline. The last report was submitted to the city in 2024. And in that, the city council selected a 30% design for a one-way roadway in each direction. And it was, as Mitch said, with Surfrider, parallel or along the current northbound direction. But just wanted to frame up that the city realizes that this is a priority project. We actually have 2 capital improvement projects already established for this road segment. And we have $2 million appropriated for furthering this project. But just to mention, the project that was approved conceptually at the 30% design level by City Council in the 2023 timeframe, that cost estimate was $280 million. And so while the city is responsible with their finances, there's a lot of different responsibilities that the city needs to budget for, and we don't have that type of money to move this project forward at this time. So we are committed to moving the project forward. The question was asked, like, what can we do if we're limited with our funding options, and we're committed to moving the project forward within this 5-year period through the design and permitting phase. If we're not able to secure that level of funding to fund a $280 million version, we will look at options on what we can afford to deliver for this significant project. And if I didn't mention, beyond the $2 million that's currently appropriated, the city has already spent to date over $2 million, and including the $500,000 that was expended during the last Conservancy grant effort. So hopefully that answers your question. I think there was also a secondary question about the active erosion spots along this road segment. And like one of our residents explained, this is a wonderful coastline, a wonderful coastal road. I travel it every day on my way home, and I also love the beach like so many other people in the city. I monitor the hotspots. We actually addressed an emergency earlier this year just to the north of this area, and we worked with our partners with Coastal Commission staff as well as state parks to address that emergency. So we're very well aware of the hotspots that we need to monitor. I review it all the time, and appreciate Surfrider's commitment to being a part of this discussion. We want a really well-vetted project, and we appreciate their participation in the budget discussions, which they did participate in, and we encourage them to continue to participate in to help the city establish its priorities. So hopefully that answered your questions, and I'm happy to answer any other questions.
All right, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Smith. All right, great. So I'll turn to Commissioner Williams and then Commissioner Preciado.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I mean, a lot of it's already been covered, but just with the whole project scoping process and environmental process, that takes a lot of time. 5 years does seem pretty aggressive to me. So just to, circling back within that time frame, hopefully, we'll have an actual project before us. And of course, $230 million is a lot of money that will just need to be acquired in some way, shape, or form. I know that not sure how the federal government is participating in climate change type work right now. So there are programs that are available, but it's just not where it was before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner Preciado.
Earlier today, I commented on the city of San Diego's financial situation, which is maybe not unique in this day and age in the county or in the state. But I too agree that the 5-year period seems aggressive. Thank you for that word, because it's quite a project, and I'm glad the city was able to illuminate to us that it's a 230, and by the time it gets ready to be done, probably a $300 million project. So it does seem like it's beyond the city's reserves to take this on immediately or to prioritize it over anything else that concerns the city. So I appreciate Commissioner Lopez's comments and the chair's comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's been a really good discussion. So with that, I'll ask whether 3 or more commissioners object to any item in the Deputy Director's report.
Chair, I continue to, and I just want to briefly just speak to that and we can move on. I don't disagree with any of you all, especially those in government, that 5 years, trying to get this would be very difficult, if not impossible. It's aggressive. A third to half of us won't be on this commission in 2 years. And so my idea is, what about giving, those people time to actually revisit the discussion of, 7 years. Now I get it's 5 years, and that's really my main objection. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay.
I can make a
Vice Chair Hart.
Yeah, I just feel that the problem is that this is on a DDR, and there's obviously a lot of concern about it. We're hearing large numbers, potential state assistance. There's just so much going on here with this project. And I think, for me anyway, and I think a lot of people share this in Surfrider, the problem is the emergency context of bringing this back over multiple times, and with what we're expecting and is being anticipated this year with the El Nino, the chance of the road blowing out completely and then having to replace the entire road. So I have one question. If it's an emergency repair, how is that paid for? Where does that money come from if it's in the emergency context? Is it different than if the city were to have to come up with the money separately as not an emergency?
I think we would have to ask the city, or maybe one of our other local government
That's what I was
representatives would
thinking.
have a
Commissioner
better
Lopez
answer
does
to that
have a
question than
take
we
on
do.
this. All right.
I have way too much experience in this, so I will share typically the way that it works. If it's an emergency declared by the governor, then FEMA has the ability to step in, or they often do, and fund a project after it is fixed. They will not pay for improvement or movement of that project for a long-term fix. And I give the example of the community of San Ardo, who 2 years ago had their wastewater plant wash away in a river, and we were able to point out that the river has changed course and we needed to move it inland. They said, no, put it back where it is or we will not fund it. So we built that sewer plant right back in the river again. So again, the restrictions on how they're spent and where really confines how our jurisdictions are allowed to respond to disaster by placing things back where they were. But if it's a big enough emergency declared by the governor, then the federal government will fund it to the mass extent. Yeah.
Right. So that is a great explanation of, I think, my concern, and what a lot of people have concern is over and over putting more and more hard armoring, rebuilding, all the costs that are going into trying to fix this thing. So, I mean, in my mind, we need to do something rather than just approve it as part of the DDR. Either approve it as part of the DDR and ask that the city return with an explanation of the game plan here. How is it going with the planning? What grants have they applied for? How is Caltrans involved? I mean, so it's either pull it off the DDR for a more thorough response to these questions, whatever Director Huckelbridge you think is appropriate.
Just process-wise, if it's pulled off the DDR, we would bring it back probably next month as a material amendment, and we would have a full hearing on it. And so there would be more opportunity for discussion and an ability to make changes, for example, or have this discussion a little bit more in depth with the city, if you so choose. If we keep, I think if we kept it in the DDR, we would leave it as is. And I mean, obviously, we will continue to work with the city and push and do all the things that we would normally do, but we don't have an ability to add that at this point to the amendment.
Thank you. I'm supportive of pulling it from the DDR and scheduling it for a full hearing.
Okay, so 2 objections. Is there a third objection?
Yes, and I just want to add that it would be nice to have with that report a financial plan from them to just outline what it is that they're proposing, what the framework is to actually move it forward and sources of funds or other types of projections.
Okay, thank you. So 3 commissioners have objected to this item, so we will need to bring it back as described by Director Huckleberry. As to the remaining